Okay, welcome to Shabil to Uganda e-learning, and my name is Nelson. In today's lesson, I want to make a continuation on where we are able to stop from. Remember, we had talked about understanding these fractions and their operations, and we looked at different examples. How we are going to handle this topic and all that is going to contain within this topic. Then we also looked at what do we call these fractions and how can you represent or how can you show them. Maybe if it is given on a Venn diagram, and also maybe if it is given on a particular, or when it is in any certain kind of shape. So we went ahead and looking at the categories of these fractions, then worked out how these fractions look like, and the kind of fractions, which is the mixed fraction. Then today's lesson we want to more concentrate on what we call equivalent fractions. This is also part of what we talked about, and it is in our breakdown overview of our topic. So this is what we are going to be looking at, and want to understand more of these equivalent fractions. Sometimes they always ask about these equivalent fractions. They tell you what is the next equivalent fraction, like you can see here. What is the next equivalent fractions? When they have only given you one fraction, when they have only given you what is only one fraction, then they tell you find the next either 3 or 4 equivalent fractions. So it is possible with here. We shall also be able to find out how do we get it. For example, here to demonstrate it more, we are saying these are fractions with the same value but having different numerators. They have the same value but they are having different different numerators and denominators. For example, here we have our table as it is given. Our table is here, and this table was bisected, or it was divided into several parts. The shaded and the unshaded, as you can see here, we have this is the shaded and also this is the unshaded. So they decided to say when they shade this part, which is a part on all this shape of ours, but they decided to divide it into very many for us to be able to understand what these equivalent fractions are. Here they were able to say, as you can see here, we have our this part of ours which is shaded. There is a shaded part and unshaded. So that simply means that in this part only we have one out of what? 1 out of 2. Then also in our second part, they were able to get the shaded part was also able to be divided into several into several parts. So they are now able to say that this part is going to be 1 out of 1 out of 4. Okay, then they also subdivided our third part into 3. These are 1, 2, 3. Then after dividing them, they were able to say this is a 3 out of out of 6. Then they further divided 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 4 out of 6. Then they further divided them 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is how we can represent an equivalent set. So we shall also look at some other kind of methods that we shall use, or that we use while representing these equivalents. So now let's look at our example which has been given. Our example which has been given. We have been given an example here. We have been given an example. Let me get a pen here. Okay, so this is an example which has been given. We are having our part A. Okay, our part A. Okay, let's just work it from here. We have our part A. We have our part A. This is our part A, which is given. Let's look at what was given. We have our 1 out of what? 1 out of our part A, which is our 2 out of 7. So we want to get out some more equivalent what? Some more equivalent fractions. We want to get some more equivalent what? Equivalent fractions. Our part A, we're having 2 out of 7. So we want to get some more equivalent what? Equivalent fractions. Remember, we are saying these equivalent fractions, it is just the same, but having different denominators and numerators. So how can we duplicate this fraction of ours to have some more equivalent fractions? For us, we can be able to use our logic. You get our numerator, which is a 2. You multiply it. You multiply it by what? You multiply it by 2. Then you also still divide it by what? By 2. So this is going to give us our 4 out of 14. Okay, out of what? Out of 14. Then we also, if you also still want to get another equivalent of this, okay, we can say what is that? We can say our 4 out of 14 times 4. Then here times what? Times also 4. Okay, times 4. We can still get our other equivalent. So here we shall be able to come up with our 16 out of what? What is 4 times 14? This is 4 times 4, which is the same as 16. What is 4 times 1? Okay, 4 times 1, we shall get our 50 what? 56. So this method, it gives us an answer that we have an equivalent what? Equivalent of this set. So let's look at how these were able to derive out our example. Okay, so they multiplied our this as 1 or 2 and 3. Okay, so using also a method of this they got their 2. Okay, here they were also able to use another method where you get our 2 out of 7. Okay, then times 2 out of 7. Then also we come to our 2 out of 7. We multiply it by the next number, which is a 3 out of 3. Then also 2 out of 7. Then we still multiply it by 4 out of what? Out of 4. Then here we can still have another one, which is 5 out of, 2 out of 7 times 5 out of 5. So here we shall get different values, but they still mean the same. That's how we can get our equivalent. Here we can get our 4 out of 7. Here we can get our 6 out of 6 out of what? Out of what is 3 times 7? 20 what? 21. Then here we can also still get our 8 out of 7. What is 7 times 4? This is what? 20 what? 28. Then when you get this, we shall still have our 10 out of what is 5 times 7? Okay, Okay, you just say 7 7 7 7. So this is 14 28 plus 7. Okay, what is 28 plus 7? This is 50 watt. Okay, 55. Okay, 55. So this number is still equivalent to this number of hours. So that's how we are going to be solving out equivalence of these numbers. Okay, all right. To give more examples on those, we have what we call our 2 out of 7 is the same as 4 out of this. Here now they had solved it like we have done it up here. They were trying to demonstrate how we have been able to come up with these numbers of ours. Then we can still have another number, which is 1 out of what? 1 out of 3. They were saying 1 out of 3 is the same as 1 times 2, then out of 2. So this is the formula we are going to be using for us to come up with what? To come up with an equivalent of these fractions. So, and we shall now be able now to see how do we answer these fractions that they have given us. Like an activity here, they are telling us write the next 2 equivalent fractions for each below. We have 1 out of 2, then 2 out of 3. Let's do one by one. We are going to do one by one. We have 1 out of 2, then 2 out of 3, 1 out of 2. Okay, our activity, question number 1. A. We have 1 out of 2, then our part B is 2 out of what? 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. Our part C is 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5. Our part D is 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3. 1. Our part D is 1 out of 3. So we want to find out these numbers, the next 2 of these numbers. Then here we can come and write our solution. Our solution A, where we have our 1 out of 2. We said we multiply by the next number, which is can try our 2 out of 2, 2 out of 2. Then here we have our 1 out of 2 times 3 out of 3. These are going to be our what? Our 2 numbers. So here we shall be able to get our 2 out of 4. Then here we shall be able to get our 3 out of 6. So these numbers still are still the same as our 1 out of what? Our 1 out of 2. That is dealing with the equivalence of these numbers. So finally now we can say that our 1 out of 2, the next number which was given should be able to be our 2 out of 4. And our next other number that they wanted should be 3 out of 6. So we shall have now got the first 2 equivalent numbers. Then here we can also solve our part B. Okay, our part B, where they gave us 2 out of what? Out of 3. So this is the same as our 2 out of 3, we said we multiply it by the next number. Our next number is going to be 3 out of 3. And then we still have our 2 out of 3. Then we multiply it by the next number from 3. It's going to be our 4 out of 4. So these numbers, for us to be able now to come up with the two equivalent of our number, which is 2 out of 3. This is going to be equal to, what is 2 times 3? We shall get our 6 here out of 9. 9 is coming from 3 times 3, okay? Then our other next number is going to be what? What is 2 times 4? Okay, then I will divide it by, and it's going to be 12. So these are our next two equivalent numbers of part B. Then we have our part C. We had our 2 out of 5. So this, we are also going to solve it, and we look out for the next number. This is the same as 2 out of 5 times our 3 out of 3. Then we also look for the next number, which is 2 out of 5 times 4 out of 4. So let's now continue and get out our next number here. This 2 times 3, we shall have our 6 as, then 3 times 5 is going to be 15. Then we have our 2 times 4. 2 times 4, we shall have our 8 out of 20. So these numbers are still equivalent to 2 out of 2. How can we prove that? If we have our 8 out of 20, it is the same as 2 out of 5. So how can we do this? We look out for the factor that can divide this. If we look out for a factor that can divide our 8, if we use a 4, when we divide 8 divided by 4, we shall be able to get our 2. Then also when we divide our 20 by 4, we shall get 5, which is still the same as what? Which is still the same as this. Okay, so let's complete with our part D. And our part D was 1 out of what? 1 out of 3. So this is also going to be equal to 1 out of 3 times 2 out of 2. Then our next number is going to be 1 out of 3 times 3 out of 3. So here we shall be able to come up with our number. From 1 out of 3, our next number is going to be equal to 2 out of 6. Then another next number is going to be 3 out of 9. So here we have been able to get our numbers accordingly. So this is how we can get the equivalence of these numbers, especially when they have told you to find out the next number. All right, so we can see that on our activity which has been given to us, we shall now be able to look at some of these numbers because we are given our number. We are given our number, what? Number activity 1, we had two numbers, our number 1 and our number 2. Okay, so in our next lesson, we shall now be able to handle out these numbers that has even an unknown. How do you solve a 1 out of 2 being equal to this? Okay, how do you solve 3 out of 5 is going to be equal to P out of 16? All right, that's going to be in our what? In our next lesson. Please stay on. We shall be able to do what? We shall be able to do more on this. Thank you very much for being part of this lesson. I shall still meet in our next lesson. See you. Nice moment.